and it's my pleasure to introduce you to Alyn Smith. Alyn is a member of the European Parliament for Scotland, and he is, in this capacity, a member of the European Parliament's Agriculture Committee, an alternate member of the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, and the Parliament's delegation for relations with Switzerland, Iceland and Norway, and I would also assume perhaps the Faroes on that list. Thank you very much, Alyn. The floor is yours.
Kate, thanks very much, and good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to be here in the Faroes. Thank you in particular for arranging some good Scottish weather to greet me. That's been most appreciated. And as a simple politician, I'll start with a confession. I'm not a scientist. So not being a scientist, I'm afraid I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, because to ask us to talk and press buttons at the same time is beyond any politicians, especially European ones. So I'll do my best for you nonetheless. And hopefully as a member of the European Parliament, as a Scottish member of the European Parliament and a member from the National Party of Scotland, we're the government of Scotland now, hopefully I have something to contribute to the discussion, because if there's anything that's been made very clear to me over the past couple of days as I've been in and out of the workshops this morning, listening to the presentations yesterday, that science is part of this picture, politics is another part of it, and the reactions which we must make on a political level to the scientific evidence that you're producing demonstrate that we really are all in this together, and we really are much more connected than perhaps our governmental structures give the impression of being. So having said that, and given my confession that there's no PowerPoint presentation, I would outline to you this morning the fact that I'll give you the European view about where this is going, about what we're doing about climate change, and specifically what we're doing about fisheries management, given the topics this morning, because there is a lot of changes underway within the European Union. And from a Scottish perspective, I'll tell you what the government of Scotland has been doing, particularly in terms of reaching out to our friends and our neighbours, like yourselves. Now, I'll talk about briefly the marine strategy of the European Union, the reform measures of the common fisheries policy, and particularly what the Scottish Government is doing within the European Union. Now, to start as well with a health warning, I'm here as a member of the European Parliament, I'm here as a proud European, I'm here as very much a Europhile politician, but I'm not here to praise the common fisheries policy. The European Union common fisheries policy has been a disaster. It is daft, to use a good Scots word. It is anti-fish, it is anti-environment, it is anti-science, it is anti-fishing community, it is anti-European, because our biggest problem with EU membership in Scotland, and as a prospective independent country, the debate in Scotland is, if we become independent in 2010 when we're going to have our referendum, do we want to remain part of the EU and shackle ourselves to the European Union's disastrous fisheries policy? Now, from a perspective like the Faroese or the Icelandic or the Norwegian, where fisheries accounts for that much more of your economy, that much more of your national identity, I don't blame you for not wanting to join the European Union, because I wouldn't recommend membership of the EU to you. Who would sign up to a fisheries management system where every year we have the scientific warnings, we have ICES, we have all the scientific data put in front of us in September, and every December we throw it out the window at the Fisheries Council's meeting in Brussels? And the politicians take over, the politicians from mighty fishing nations like Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, who, charming as they are, do not know one end of a fish from the other, and with the exception of a few rivers and lakes, do not understand Europe's maritime heritage, do not understand Europe's maritime potential and Europe's maritime future. Whereas you only need to look at the map, which was up earlier, to see that we have a commonality of interest in the North Atlantic that gives us a leading expertise in fisheries management, and what we should be doing is running the EU's fisheries policy, where at present the EU's fisheries policy is running us. And we have the disastrous environmental consequences which we've seen over the past decades, which are not getting better, they're getting worse. Now, as I say that, the Government of Scotland is not a great fan of the common fisheries policy, and I'll be coming back to that. But there are things which are happening. On 11th of December 2011, the European Union launched the marine strategy. Now, this is actually a very positive development within the EU. One of the biggest problems that I have with the European Commission is that it's one of the most schizophrenic organisations you'll ever meet. If you talk to the Energy Directorate, you'll have a very good energy discussion. If you talk to the Fisheries Directorate, you'll have a good fisheries discussion. If you talk to the Competition Law Directorate, you'll have a good competition law discussion. But to talk about the competition law aspects of fisheries, you're not going to get the two matching up. To talk to the energy aspects about how marine wave power, for example, will interact with fisheries policy, they don't have any idea of what each other's talking about. So the marine strategy is unusual in that it actually matches up 5 of the Directorates General of the European Commission and forces them all into one room to talk to each other. Now, you wouldn't have thought that was rocket science within a modern management structure, but actually within Brussels terms, it really is quite groundbreaking. So it's positive that that is happening, and the marine strategy is a fundamentally new way for the EU to do business, so I would commend it to you. The European Parliament, under Marie-Noëlle Lienemann, a French socialist MEP, drafted our response to the marine consultation, and it's quite clear that we are going to be working on this for many years to come, because climate change is overshadowing all aspects of the EU's work. I'm not going to touch on today the energy package, which the EU unveiled. President Barroso came to the Parliament some weeks ago to unveil the package to us, but you'll all have heard the 20% by 2020. Lots of buzzwords and targets. We're going to have 10% of our transport produced by biofuels, apparently. We're going to invest massively in energy efficiency, wave technology, deep marine wind power, all sorts of biomass, all sorts of cracking initiatives which we can cooperate with you guys on, because you have an expertise that you can bring to the table, and I would urge you to do so. And the establishment of TACIT is, I think, a fantastic initiative, and we'll be watching from Brussels with interest. I'll be watching from Scotland with even more interest. But the marine strategy is rolling forward. The member states need to assess the state of environment and the pressures in their respective marine regions, and particularly this is positive in the sense that countries with no marine regions actually aren't playing any part in it. Now, again, in an EU of 27, we need to find new ways of working, and it's much more a la carte. It's the countries with a particular interest in a particular topic are becoming involved in it. So the marine environmental status as it stands is insufficient, and we will apply an ecosystem-based approach to the management of human activities to ensure that the collective pressures of such activities are kept within sustainable levels. The aim is to ensure that all marine waters, in all their ecological diversity, remain dynamic, clean, healthy and productive. There has already been a fair slug of EU money devoted to increased scientific research. The scientific community across the European Union is having much more grant money thrown at it, which is, I believe, very positive, because the scientific evidence is the only start for any rational discussion. And that's what's been lacking in the EU's discussions for many years. So the marine strategy in the widest sense is particularly interesting because it brings all the strands together, but we still have a way to go there. Specifically on the reform of the common fisheries policy, 28th of February 2008, really very recently, the European Commission launched a consultation on reform of the control system of the common fisheries policy. Now, you may hear that the EU is a monolithic block, that this common fisheries policy is here to stay. No, it's not. The common fisheries policy is being reformed. It's being reformed too slowly, in my view, but it is being reformed, and the European Commission will privately admit that they are very keen to hear examples of best practice. They are very keen to hear any expertise from anybody who knows what they're talking about, because they know that this is a disastrous policy which brings the EU into disrepute. So a consultation has been launched, and it is a consultation. I trust the Faroese government will be making a contribution to the reform consultation discussions. So the consultation will lead to a new council regulation in October this year. There will be various meetings of stakeholders at the end of April, and the consultation will close on the 5th of May. There's a date for your diaries. But we'll have a new council regulation proposal which will eventually replace the existing one, which dates back to 1993. And of course, since 1993, there's been an awful lot of changes in the marine ecosystem. There's been an awful lot of changes politically. There's been an awful lot of changes in terms of scientific data about what climate change is actually doing. So it's right that we should have a new regulation, but it's indicative of just where we are, that it's taken so long to actually come up with one, and we're still working off legislation that dates from realistically 15 years ago.